Somewhere in a pediatrician's office, a mother watches her son play with blocks. He is 18 months old, bright-eyed, clearly listening. The doctor holds up a stuffed rabbit across the room and waits. The boy glances at it. He does not point. He does not look back at his mother to share the moment. And in that small, silent absence, the doctor writes a note that will shape the rest of this child's life. Because in clinics around the world, the failure to point at this age is one of the early behavioral signs clinicians watch for when assessing autism spectrum disorder. A single, unremarkable gesture, the kind we perform 100 times a day without thinking, has become one of the most closely watched signs of how a human mind is developing. Which raises a question that sounds almost too simple to be profound. Why does pointing matter so much? Why does an act any toddler can do, an act that requires no words and barely any muscle, sit at the very foundation of what makes us human? Because here is the part that should stop you cold. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, sharing roughly 98% of our DNA, essentially never do it. Not to each other, not in the wild. By the end of this film, you'll understand why a simple extended finger may be the single clearest fingerprint of the human mind, and why, stranger still, of all the creatures on Earth, it may be the dog sitting by your feet that understands it best. Picture a chimpanzee enclosure at a primate research center. A researcher points at a hidden piece of fruit inside one of two identical containers. The chimp is intelligent, food-motivated, entirely capable of using tools and solving puzzles that would stump a toddler. And yet, again and again, it stares at the finger itself, or at the space near it, apparently unable to grasp that the gesture is meant to redirect its attention somewhere else entirely. Meanwhile, in labs studying human infants, researchers have found that babies begin pointing at objects, at birds, at aeroplanes overhead, months before they can say a single word, reaching toward the world not to get something for themselves, but simply to share the experience of seeing it with someone else. It seems almost too small a difference to matter. And yet, developmental psychologists, most notably Michael Tomasello and his colleagues, have spent decades arguing this difference is not small at all, that it may be one of the clearest windows we have into the evolutionary split between us and every other primate on Earth. Imagine trying to invent language before you'd ever learned how to say look. That, in essence, is the puzzle researchers found themselves facing. Because pointing isn't really about the finger, it's about the shift in attention behind it. When an infant points at a passing dog, she isn't just naming an object, she is checking whether you're looking at it too, glancing back to confirm the two of you are now sharing the same small piece of the world. Psychologists call this joint attention, and Tomasello's research suggests it emerges around 9 to 12 months of age, well before language, scaffolding that speech may later be built on top of. Before a child can say look, she has already learned to make you look. The pointing finger, in other words, may be the first sentence any of us ever spoke. So why don't chimpanzees do this when they're demonstrably capable of understanding cause and effect, tool use, even rudimentary planning? Researchers who study captive apes have found something curious. Chimpanzees can be taught to point, and they do it well, but almost always to ask for something, reaching toward fruit they want a human to hand them. What's missing is the other kind of pointing, the kind with no reward at all, done simply to share a moment. Look at that with me. In the wild, field researchers have documented remarkably few instances of chimpanzees pointing to inform one another about anything. The capacity is there. The motivation, it seems, is not. And this is where the story takes its first real turn, because the twist isn't that apes are simply less intelligent. In many respects, they're formidable thinkers. The twist is that the gap isn't one of raw intellect at all. It's one of motivation. Some researchers argue what separates us isn't a bigger brain doing more computation, but a brain wired with an unusual, almost compulsive desire to share what's inside our heads with someone else's. Call it a hunger for shared minds. Suddenly, thousands of years of human history begin to look different. It explains how early humans built structures no single person could construct alone, how hunting parties coordinated across vast plains without a language sophisticated enough to spell out a plan in words, how entire cultures passed knowledge down across generations. The theory, associated closely with Tomasello's work on shared intentionality, suggests that long before complex grammar evolved, our ancestors were already binding themselves together through the simple, radical act of directing one another's attention. But here the investigation offers its strangest twist yet, because if pointing really is a signature of a uniquely human kind of social cognition, then no other species should be particularly good at reading it. That assumption collapses the moment you bring a dog into the room. Studies led by researchers such as Brian Hare found that domestic dogs, without specialized training, spontaneously and reliably follow a human point toward a hidden object. A skill even human-raised chimpanzees typically fail to master with the same ease. Puppies only weeks old with no prior exposure to human pointing have shown this ability in experimental settings. It's a genuinely strange result. An animal separated from us by tens of millions of years of evolution, reading our gestures more fluently than the primates who share our family tree. The leading explanation isn't that dogs are secretly more intelligent than chimpanzees. It's that domestication itself may have selected, again and again, for individuals more attuned to human social cues, reshaping the species around a talent for reading us. If true, it means this single gesture has quietly acted as a dividing line running not just through the primate family tree, but through the entire animal kingdom, separating creatures that live alongside human attention from those that, however clever, simply never needed to. None of this makes chimpanzees lesser, and it would be a mistake to treat this as a story of human superiority. It's more accurately a story about difference in kind rather than in degree, two branches of the primate family arriving at radically different solutions to the problem of survival. Chimpanzee societies are shaped by competition, hierarchy, often solitary problem solving. Human societies, from their earliest traces, appear to have been shaped by an unusual willingness to cooperate with strangers, to teach, to build on one another's discoveries, rather than start from nothing each generation. The pointing finger isn't the cause of that difference so much as its earliest visible symptom, the first outward sign of a mind built to think together rather than alone, which brings the story back to that quiet examination room, to the toddler who never lifted his hand toward the rabbit. The clinicians watching for that absence aren't testing a child's intelligence, or his capacity for love, or his potential. They're looking for the earliest flicker of a very particular, very human impulse. The drive not just to notice the world, but to insist that someone notice it with you. It's a strange kind of miracle when you sit with it. The same small gesture that once helped Ice Age hunters coordinate across open grassland, that helps a dog anticipate its owner's next move, that helps a doctor glimpse how a young mind is forming, is happening right now in nurseries and living rooms everywhere, entirely unremarked upon. The next time a child tugs your sleeve and points at something ordinary, a bird, a truck, a patch of light on the wall, it's worth remembering what that motion actually is. Not a request, not a demand, an invitation into someone else's mind, offered before that child even has the words to know what an invitation is.